Hi, hello, howdy. I'm Chandler, and this is the Chandler Reads 52 Books podcast. I've set a goal for myself to read 52 books during the year 2021, and this podcast is my way of recording my experiences and progress throughout that journey. I'll be reading fiction, non-fiction, classics, new arrivals, and really just anything that'll help me learn cool things about cool stuff. If you want to hear a random dude talk about stuff he reads, then my friend, you are certainly in the right place. Hi, hello, howdy. Today is January 29th, 2021, and I just finished A Promised Land by Barack Obama. I finished book 1 of 2021. I'm off to a little bit of a slow start, obviously. I took 29 days to read the first book, but we're still going strong. I had a little bit of a slump at certain points of the month with reading, with different things that came up, but hey, I guess that's kind of how things go, right? I'm really excited to be able to talk about the book and kind of the things the thoughts that came into my mind as I was reading it, and I just, all the things that I learned. It was a really, really good book to start the year off with, and to start this podcast off as well. I'm going to talk about kind of those different things that I liked and that I learned, like I said. I'm also going to share a few quotes that I liked and just some random things that I thought about as I was reading it. But first, what I want to do is I want to give kind of some of the stats about the book as far as my reading of it went. I use an app called Bookly that kind of tracks the statistics of your reading and the speed at which you read and how long it takes you to read things. And so what it does is it takes the amount of pages that you read during a certain time. Like when you start reading, you click start, and then when you finish, you hit end, and you can enter thoughts and quotes and different words that you learned and stuff like that. So at the end, the app actually gives you a little infographic that's kind of like, hey, this is your speed in reading and all these different things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read that really quick. It's kind of interesting. I think it's going to be kind of interesting at the end of the year to kind of look back on the books and see which ones took longer to read, which ones were more dense in their material and whatnot. So as far as this book goes, it was 701 pages, and it took me 27 hours, 54 minutes, and 24 seconds to read. So that means I read 25 pages an hour. The most pages I read in a single day was 54, and the most minutes I read in a day was 120, so 2 hours. And so those are kind of just the stats of my reading of the book. It was a bit slow, like I said. I'm going to have to pick up the pace if I'm going to want to do 52 this year. But this book honestly was one of the longer books on my list. The book itself is pretty big. Like, the pages themselves are pretty tall and pretty wide, and the font is also really small, and it's over 700 pages. So I kind of give myself some slack there, but there's some other books that I'm going to be reading in the year that are a little bit less dense as far as like the content goes, as far as comprehension and absorbability, I guess. Like, I'm reading Harry Potter next, and that's going to be more of like a read through it really quickly, because I'm not so much reading facts about politics and different things like that like I was in this book. But yeah, I want to go ahead and talk about just some of the different things in the book. To start, first off, like, I'm not a super political person. Like, I tend to be pretty moderate in a lot of my political views. So this review of the book really isn't going to be from a person who cares super passionately or I guess just about different topics or controversial issues in politics. So you don't have to worry about that. But just kind of generally, the book talked about. I guess the book kind of had these different phases or these different sections of it that I kind of we'll go over really quick. It started off with basically talking about his childhood. I mean, it's kind of a memoir of sorts, so it goes through different stages of his life. But it starts in his childhood, talks about his grandparents and his parents and different things like that. Then it goes into his later years, starting a family, meeting Michelle, going to college, having kids and whatnot. And then it goes into his time in the Senate, and that takes a little bit of the book where he talks about kind of getting into politics in the first place. It also goes into his campaigning for the 2008 election, against John McCain, and I guess like kind of like the transition that his life took when he became like when he transitioned from not in politics, then to being in the Senate, and then to running for the president, and obviously eventually winning the campaign. But it was really interesting to kind of learn and hear a little bit about the transition that one's life takes when they, I don't know, like open their life up to the public, basically. And they're, they go through a vetting process. Basically everything that they've done in their lives is going to come up, and just that transition. So that was really cool. Then it kind of goes in, once he's won the election in 2008, it really digs into like the first 2 or 3 years of his presidency, talking about like, the housing crisis that happened right when he inherited the presidency, about, like the 2008 recession. And then it also talks about the BP oil spill, things in the Middle East and different conflicts that he had to deal with there. And then the book ends talking about, kind of wrapping up the whole story about Osama bin Laden and the, I guess everything about that really. What was interesting is I thought the book was going to be more of like through the end of his presidency, but it actually ended there. And so there's still like 5 or 6 years of, of untold stories, from his presidency. I don't know if he talks about it in his other books, but I would love to read, like, I don't know, A Promised Land Part 2, because I think that it would be really cool to learn and read more about, the things that came later in his presidency. Like, it didn't even mention Mitt Romney. I mean, it did mention Mitt Romney in other capacities, but it didn't mention Mitt Romney in like the Obama's second campaign for the presidency, like in the 2012 election. So I would love to read about that, but it wasn't in this book. It was actually kind of fun though, as I was learning about those different things, like the 2008 housing crisis, the oil spill, things in the Middle East, and Osama bin Laden. I personally, when those things were happening, from the years 2008 to 2010 or 11, when the events in this book took place, I really wasn't all that conscious of politics at all, or like things in the world outside of my little, 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade mind. And so it's kind of interesting because I do remember the oil spill, generally speaking. Like I remember it existing, and I obviously have learned more about it as my life has gone on, but to learn more about it in detail has been kind of cool. Also, Osama bin Laden and the like the raid on his compound and things like that. I remember hearing the news about his assassination, but I don't really remember much other than just seeing it on the news one time and being like, oh, okay, cool. So I really, really enjoyed being able to learn more about those things. And also, too, like, as I was reading this book and Obama would mention different things that happened, like different specific events in his life. Maybe it was at a like a presidential briefing he gave of something, when he was talking about different things that happened and different controversies. I was able to go then watch those videos on YouTube, and I really liked that, to be able to hear him talk about a speech he gave and then go watch it on YouTube, or to have him talk about the BP oil spill and then go look up footage of that and the different things that he talks about in this book. I really liked that. So I think that was kind of something that I honestly haven't done all that much in books. As I've been reading books like in my life, I really want to do more of that when it talks about a specific event that happens, like go and research it a little bit by myself. And that was honestly really fun. I want to actually read a few quotes from the book that I really liked and kind of talk about why I liked them and my thoughts on either Obama's, personal views of things or different, almost opinions, but rather like, I guess, personal beliefs that he has, really. So I'm going to start with this one that was kind of near the beginning of the book. I'm just going to read the quote and talk about it a little bit. So this first one is pretty early on in the book, but it's kind of just a question he asks almost that I really resonated with. I think it was one of the first things that I actually highlighted in the book. I didn't actually highlight it in the book. I took a picture of it and highlighted it on my phone and then input it into the Bookly app. But the quote goes, "When was compromise acceptable and when was it selling out, and how did one know the difference?" And I thought that was really interesting. I honestly don't really remember what specifically he was referencing in asking this this rhetorical question, but it just kind of hit me kind of hard. I guess that's something that I personally have thought about in my life, but without really realizing that I had thought about it as much as I had. like compromise. Like we all have beliefs that we hold, and we all have different things that we think are important and significant and deserve a certain amount of respect or a certain amount of seriousness, as we regard them in our lives. And so when we have things that come up in our lives that threaten to make us, or at least give us the, a good opportunity, or kind of tempt us to do something against those beliefs or those things that we hold sacred and dear, when is it compromise, or when is it acceptable, or when is it selling out? Like, where do you draw the line of, I'm learning new information, and so I need to change my point of view, and I need to take into consideration more things that I'm learning? Or am I selling out? Am I just throwing away all of my beliefs? And that's kind of a stressful thing sometimes in our lives. And I don't mean to sound all deep and introspective here, but I feel like Barack Obama kind of put into words this thought that I've had in the past of, where's that balance? When am I doing something that's acceptable, and when am I just selling out? I really thought that was really neat. And throughout the book, Obama would kind of go on to ask questions like this, things that I thought were really, I guess, deep, for lack of a better word. Like, I don't know, they made me I think a little bit, and I really like when books do that, when they make me think. I don't want to just read to read. I want to read to learn and to think, and things like that. This next quote that I'm going to read is one of the quotes that I feel like, among others, really personalized or humanized Barack Obama in my eyes. Because like I said, growing up, like during his presidency, I really didn't have any opinions about politics. Like I didn't really grow up, thinking about the politics on a daily basis, in any sense. So I really like being able to have these. I guess just Obama in his presidency was a thing that I lived through, but now I'm able to go through and kind of learn a little bit more about the man, and the who ran the country for 8 years, and learn these things about him in addition to his beliefs and his different political ideologies and stuff. So this one really humanizes him in my eyes, and I think that was really cool. So it says, I manned the late shift so Michelle could sleep, resting Malia on my thighs to read to her as she looked up with big questioning eyes, or dozing off as she laid on my chest. A burp and a good poop behind us, so warm and serene. I thought about the generations of men who had missed such moments, and I thought about my own father, whose absence had done more to shape me than the brief time I'd spent with him, and I realized that there was no place on earth I would rather be. And I really liked that. Basically, it's just at some point, as he's kind of becoming a lot more known in the world, and people are recognizing him, and he can't really go out in public anymore, he's just reflecting on this moment where he was just lying on the couch or in the bed or something with his daughter, and Michelle was, his wife was resting because she had been working hard all day, and he just kind of reflects on life for a second. He's like, he talks about his own dad, and how his dad wasn't really an active part of his life at all, and so he's just talking about in this quote about how this moment that he found himself in was just perfect. It was just so serene and peaceful, and he loved it, and he realized that he wanted to be, not realized, I'm sure he had thought about it before, but in that moment specifically, he was like, I want to be a good father to my daughters, and I want to make a difference in their lives. And I think that's really neat. He talks in at different points of the book about his dad a little bit, and this, where he says that he thought about how his father's absence had done more to shape him than the brief time that he had spent with him. And so the fact that he didn't grow up with a father, and that he had to learn so many things from his mom and his grandma, for example, is one person he talks about a lot. It's kind of cool to think about how he kind of overcame those odds, and he was still able to do great things, and make a difference in the things that he did. Even though his upbringing wasn't perfectly ideal. No one's really is, obviously, if you in the sense of the word perfect, but it's kind of cool to think about that as far as the things that he's talking about there. The next quote that I'm going to read is again, it's kind of another ideology that he has, or like a belief. But I'll read it here. It says, "The truth is, I've never been a big believer in destiny. I worry that it encourages resignation in the down and out and complacency among the powerful. I suspect that God's plan, whatever it is, works on a scale too large to admit our mortal tribulations, that in a single lifetime, accidents and happenstance determine more than we care to admit, and that the best we can do is try to align ourselves with what we feel is right and construct some meaning out of our confusion, and with grace and nerve play at each moment the hand that we're dealt. And I thought that was neat too. Like I like the learning a little bit more about the way that he views the world, because obviously with politics you've got very opposing beliefs as far as specific things go, about abortion or about immigration or about taxes and foreign relations and all these different things. But just to hear him talk about destiny and how it's something that he doesn't really buy into the whole belief of destiny, and he talks about more about how we've got to kind of do our own work to make a difference and to kind of make something out of the confusion that is in the world and that kind of makes up the world. I think that's pretty neat that he talks about that. So anyway, I thought that was kind of neat. The next quote here is talking about, let's see. Oh yeah, so the next one here is talking about kind of as he was making up the people that would surround him in the White House and the different capacities that they had as far as like, people that dealt with the wars and people that dealt with the economy and people that dwelt with foreign relations and different things like that. He says, he's talking about a specific guy. He says, having his voice at the table, along with those of people like Jim Jones, the retired four-star general and former head of the European Command, whom I had slated as my first national security advisor, guaranteed that I'd hear a broad range of perspectives before making major decisions, and that I would have to continually test even my deepest assumptions against people who had the stature and confidence to tell me when I was wrong. And I really like that a lot, what he talks about. He'd purposely surround himself with people who either had, somewhat opposing opinions to his own, or that he knew would challenge the assumptions that he made of the world. And, that's when you think about politics and kind of the cynicism that surrounds the partisan politics that we have in the world, it's kind of refreshing to hear someone be like, I wanted to hear different opinions and I wanted to be told I was wrong, just so that I could double check and make sure, like, hey, am I actually doing the right thing? Is this really what I think is right? And he talks about that a couple different times in the book, but I really liked that specific quote because that's something that you hope the leader of any country or state or any type of organization ever would hopefully take into consideration different viewpoints that are opposing to their own, and I think that's kind of cool that he wrote about that. This next quote here is talking about, let's see. Oh, this is kind of the same thing, actually. I wanted to include this one, too, because it was talking about that same thing. So it says, I would later invite two groups of outside economists, one left-leaning, the other conservative, who publicly questioned our handling of the financial crisis, to meet me in the Oval Office, just to see if they had any ideas that we hadn't already considered. And so this is talking about how when he actually won the presidency and started, I guess, kind of at the work of fixing the economy that had happened, or that had kind of fallen apart due to the housing crisis. Obviously, every pundit and every newscast or news station and all these different people were just criticizing him and the way that he was handling things, and obviously, there's the left and the right and all the different opposing ideas of what should and shouldn't happen, but he invited some of these people that were criticizing him to the Oval Office and was just like, hey, like, what else do you think we can do? I want to fix this too. What else do you think I can do? And they didn't really have any, opinions that he hadn't already considered or that could really fix what was happening. And that's not to say that he's, saying, oh, look at me, I already know everything, but rather that he wanted to be fair in his considerations of what he was doing and all that. And, regardless of whether or not you agree with the things that he actually does or did as the president, again, I kind of go back to that whole, that's what you hope anyone would do in any position of power. And so I really like those two quotes for that reason. Here's another quote, and this one, let's see, it is talking about the transition. I mentioned it before too, the transition that he went through, becoming the president and becoming someone who was so recognizable in the world, the first black president of the United States. And the first a lot of things, honestly, throughout his whole political career, even in the Senate and in all these different things that he did. He talks a lot about how, like one time he talked about how he went to the zoo when he had just won a seat in the Senate, and he went to the zoo with his daughter, and he kind of did the classic thing where he donned a baseball cap and a pair of sunglasses, and he's like, "Oh, I'll be fine. No one's going to recognize me." But like half an hour into his zoo visit, everyone recognized who he was, even before he was president. It was just when he was just when he had barely won the seat in the Senate, and so that transition of, just a guy to not just a guy, but to someone who's a lot more recognizable, and paparazzi and reporters and all these different things following him. Kind of a crazy transition. So this is actually a lot later in the book where he talks about a dream that he had, that a recurring dream that he would have throughout his presidency, and maybe still today, I don't know. But he says, here's the quote, it says, "I know that it was around this time that I started having a recurring dream. In it, I find myself on the streets of some unnamed city, a neighborhood with trees, storefronts, light traffic. The day's pleasant and warm with a soft breeze, and people are shopping or walking their dogs or coming home from work. In one version, I'm riding a bike, but most often I'm on foot, and I'm strolling along without any thoughts in particular, when suddenly I realize that no one recognizes me. My security detail is gone. There's nowhere I have to be. My choices have no consequence. I wander into a corner store and buy a bottle of water or iced tea, making small talk with the person behind the counter. I settle down on a nearby bench, pop open the cap of my drink, take a sip, and just watch the world passing by. I feel like I've won the lottery." And as I read that, I was just like, wow, that would kind of suck to not be able to just, stop and blend in and just do nothing for a little while, because he doesn't really have that luxury, especially when he was president. And that's not something that you can really just do, is like walk down the street and go buy a Coke from the 7-Eleven. And that's something that he seems to have yearned for, especially during the time that he was president. He talks about that a few different times in the book, like the experience I shared about the zoo and different things. But with the security detail, with the Secret Service, and every time his children went somewhere, they had to have Secret Service agents with them. And he really, with like the maids and the butlers that were in the White House, he never really had moments to himself or just to his family. And so this dream I thought was really interesting, where he's just like, hey, I really like this feeling of just being alone. And being free to do whatever I want. And that was an interesting perspective to think about too. Because obviously, you kind of hear about, throughout time, like in my life, I've heard about different people transitioning to fame and fortune, where they, have paparazzi following them all the time or whatever, these things. But I really like the way that Obama writes about it, and kind of the wording that he uses to convey the, almost like I said, the yearning that he has just to be normal. And I thought that was kind of neat. The last quote that I want to share is also later in the book, and this one is talking about, it's almost like an existential question that he's raising, just about politics, kind of, but also leadership, and I'll just read it and then I'll talk about it. So it says, "Looking back, I sometimes ponder the age-old question of how much difference the particular characteristics of individual leaders make in the sweep of history. Whether those of us who rise to power are mere conduits for the deep, relentless currents of times, or whether we're at least partly the authors of what's to come. I wonder whether our insecurities and our hopes, our childhood traumas or memories of unexpected kindness carry as much force as any technological shift or socioeconomic trend." And so he's talking about how he's wondering. He's like, hey, like as people like me become the president, or other people who kind of what we would call shape history, the Einsteins of the world, and the Michael Jordans of the world, and all these people, and particularly leaders, leaders like the president or kings and rulers and all that. How much are they actually doing to change the course of history? Like, are they and what they do actually leading the world or their country or whatever to a different place? Like, are they guiding history, or are they kind of just along for the ride, and whatever was going to happen anyway? It's kind of an interesting existential question, of like, does what we're doing really matter? And it's not so much like are we pointless kind of thing, but just rather it's just kind of thinking about what's our role in history. Is it something? Is it more of in the driver's seat, or is it more in the passenger seat? And that's kind of interesting, especially as he talks about all the different things that he had done and the policies that he tried to bring into place and the changes that he tried to make in the world. He's thinking to himself, like, am I making a difference, or is the difference making me? If that makes sense. And so I thought that was another cool question that he raised. Again, like, some of my favorite parts of the book were where he talked about these questions that kind of nagged at him throughout his life, and especially during his presidency. I thought they were really neat, and they, like I said earlier too, they kind of humanized him in my eyes. I was able to see a little bit more of who he is, I guess, rather than just what he did. So yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. I really liked the book. Like I said, I thought it was a really neat read. I know the book came out last year. I think it was in November, and now that I've done a little bit more research too, I understand that he's written actually a lot of books. He talked about some of the books that he actually wrote while writing this book. But Barack Obama, regardless of, like I've said a couple times, but regardless of your own political ideologies and political stance on different topics, if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about Obama and about like the guy behind the presidency, but also, it does talk a lot about things that he did in specific legislation that he tried to pass and stuff. But if you're looking for kind of a good healthy mix of both who he is and what he did, then this is a really great book to do that. Like I said, I'm not honestly like a big person into politics, but I think especially this year, like in recent months, recent years, and in recent weeks even, there's been a lot of crazy political things that have been happening in the world, and so I'm kind of wanting to broaden my horizons a little bit in understanding what's going on and why everyone's always screaming at each other. You know what I mean? So that's why I put this book on my list this year, and also I'm reading The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump this year. And also the, what's it called? Promises to Keep, I think is the title of the book, by Joe Biden. And going forward, I also want to read other books by George Bush and Bill Clinton. I don't know if he wrote any, but or Ronald Reagan, or just, books about even older presidents like Washington and Lincoln. I think reading is really cool in that way, that you can learn a lot of stuff. That's not a very crazy thought. Like, that's something that obviously is just, that's kind of what reading is all about, is learning things. But honestly, like, as I read more and more in my life, I realize that that's true. That reading is really a really neat opportunity to learn things that I don't know about, or to learn more about things that I already do know about. And so that's why I'm really excited for this whole podcast and this whole adventure that I'm going on, because I wanna remember the things that I'm reading. I want to be able to go back one day and listen to this podcast and be like, oh yeah, that's what I thought about A Promised Land by Barack Obama. Be able to kind of hear my own voice talking about it, and the things that I did like, and things that kind of made me think a little bit more deeply than I had about previous things. And so this book was a really good one to start out the year, I think. I'm giving it 5 stars. I really liked it, so I'm giving it 5 stars. I thought it was a really, really neat book, and I would recommend it to really anyone, but especially those people who are looking to learn a little bit more, maybe about, like I said, about him, mixed with some of what he did. So learning more about the whys in his mind of why he did things. And so that's my review of A Promised Land by Barack Obama. The next book that I'm going to read is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So it's taken a little bit of a turn there in terms of genre, I guess, or I'm reading a fiction book next by, a Harry Potter book. So I'm really excited for that, honestly, because it'll be nice to kind of go back and forth a little bit throughout this year, from fiction to nonfiction, maybe to a few there and back to fiction. But I'm really excited to read that. I very much have to anticipate that this next episode will be coming out a lot sooner, because I don't think it's going to take me 29 days to read a Harry Potter book. But I'm looking forward to it. So I guess, to stay tuned, what you can do here is you can check out my website, actually, chandlerreads52books.com. And there you can find links to my Instagram, to my Goodreads account, to stay up to date a little bit more on the like my progress and when things are going to be coming out. So go ahead and check out those. The Instagram is just at chandlerreads52books. And you can follow me there. You can reach out to me if you want. I'd love to be able to hear from some of you guys who are listening here. And let's just do this. Let's go, and we'll read some books and we'll talk about them. It was nice talking to you, and I'll see you next time. So, bye!